Network and fleet planning is to maximize the profit by flying the right aircraft to the right destination at the right time and at the right frequency. So let's look at how airline plan their network. First, they have to understand the two markets that they're trying to serve. We have what we call the local market, which is to and from a base airport, and we have the connecting market, which is through the base airport that we can, in this case, call a hub. Let's look at two's example. Estonian Air. Estonian Air is a smaller line based in Estonia. Estonia being in the corner of Europe and having all its market westbound, there is limited connecting opportunities there. So Estonian Air has to serve the local market primarily and have the right planning for this market. On the other hand, Qatar Airways, based in Qatar and in the middle of the world, can serve numerous markets by connecting them through Doha. And actually, they don't have any choice because the market size to and from Doha is so small that they don't be able to have a decent size airline. One, the airline understand its long-term strategy and where the market is. The next step is to blind the schedule. As a primary objective, the schedule has to cater for the local market. And for that, we need to have the right departure and the right arrival time. Let's look at the departure time, the yellow line. They are clearly two preferred departure times, which are in the morning around 8 o'clock, in the evening around 6 or 7 or 8. But on the arrival time preference, most people would like to arrive in the morning and have the whole day there. There might be a small bump at around 2 p.m. for people who want to arrive directly and check in at their hotel. But globally, the preference goes down with the day. This is schematic based on experience, but it's pretty accurate. Let's look at the day of the week. So there are two kinds of traffic, mainly the business traffic and the leisure traffic. The business passenger would like to have a departure on Monday and come back on Friday. And the weekend is pretty low for that traffic, which is the exact opposite of the leisure traffic, which is pretty high during the weekend and much lower during the weekdays. This is schematic again, but we can find real-life examples in the market. Let's look at Cologne, Berlin. Cologne, Berlin. We have more than 20 flights during the weekdays and only 6 to 10 during the weekends. This is clearly a business route. And the departure times, as you see, have the two bumps, although it is quite spread during the day. On the other side, let's look at the pure leisure market, like Montreal to Fort Lauderdale. And we see clearly the weekend has more flight than the weekdays, and the weakest day is a Wednesday. Leisure traffic has a lot less sensitivity to the departure time, so although we have that departure in the morning, we don't find the same in the evening. We just find flight during the day. So now that we know the preferred departure time and arrival times, let's put that in perspective with different flight times. Let's look at the historical construction of hubs in Europe and how they are structured. The preferred departure time is at 8 a.m. And let's imagine a 2-hour flight. We will spend 1 hour between the two flights just to unboard and board the plane again and come back. So we have overall 5 hours. Going at 8 and the airplane comes back at 1 p.m. We also know that the preferred arrival time it's in the morning. So let's imagine that we have an overnight flight, a long haul 8 hours flight landing at 7 a.m. So we can have the connection coming from the long haul into our medium haul. And when the medium haul comes back, we can have our departure. It is exactly how all the hubs in Europe are built. And let's take the example of Paris. With 2-hour flight, we can cover the whole Western Europe and some part of Scandinavia. And with the 8-hour flight, we can connect them both ways to the whole of Western Africa, Middle East, and some part of the North America. So this is a typical European hub. Although there are some exceptions, such as Madrid. Madrid is unique in a sense that it is the biggest hub to South America. And the flight time to South America is a lot longer than 8 hours and can be as long as 14 hours. So the hub is a bit different. We will have a departure at night at around 10 or 11 and arrival in South America during the morning. And then the airplane, we stay on the ground until nighttime again in South America and fly to Madrid and arrive in the morning in Madrid, so it can connect to the medium hull. Dubai and all the other Middle Eastern hub carriers have all, again, a different structure because of different flight time they're trying to connect. They are much longer than 8 hours. And when they come back to the base, the medium hull is already departed. So, to counter that, they have to have multiple departures to Europe and to Australia. So you will always find 2 or 3 departures to Australia, 2 or 3 departures to old cities in Europe, and to connect on the other side, we have shorter flights to Middle East and the Indian subcontinent. For the US, the connections are a bit different because there are a lot more short-haul to short-haul connections. So there, the name of the game is to have as many frequencies as possible during the day so they can connect one to the other. The fact that airlines are looking for connections causes a lot of trouble for the departure times. In order to arrive at 7 a.m., given the time difference, for example, a flight from Tel Aviv to Frankfurt would have to have a departure at 5 a.m. It is clearly not the preferred departure time from Tel Aviv, but arriving in Frankfurt at 6 or 7 a.m. is the perfect timing to catch any connection going to Europe and a lot to the US. And that is a trade-off that the airlines have to do. Do we want to focus on the local market, or do we want to focus on the connecting market? In the case of Almaty in Kazakhstan, it is much more difficult to rely on the local market. It is pretty thin, so from Almaty to Frankfurt again, the departure has to be at 4 a.m., and the local market will have to adapt to this departure time. Let's look at the medium hold. Let's forget a bit about the long hold flights, and let's look at the medium hold. Go back to our departure time at 8 a.m. and the flight coming back at 1 p.m. After 1 hour, we will have another departure that goes at 2 p.m. and we come back at 7 p.m., more or less. Then it is only 7 p.m. and we would like to have another departure, so we will have a departure at 8 p.m. and we'll end an arrival at 1 a.m. But what's happening in most airports in Europe, there is a curfew at around midnight or 11, and aircraft will have to overnight at its destination airport, which causes a crew layover, and which means that it is an additional cost for the airline. So what did the low-cost airline do? They moved the departure to 6 a.m. And already by doing that, we see that we can have our 6 flights during the day without touching the curfew. But they didn't stop there. They tried to have the highest productivity possible. So what they did is they reduced the turnaround time to 25 minutes. And by doing so, we can still have, at the end of the day, 1 hour flight and back before the curfew. So we're doing more air flying with the same number of aircraft. If we divide by the number of seats offered during the day, we realize that the fixed costs will go down by doing so. Now that we know how to plan our aircraft, we have to choose what aircraft we fly. And this is, in a high level, what we're trying to achieve with the fleet plan. For the short route, we would try to have a turboprop. When the route is a bit longer, we go for regional jets, and for longer routes, we go for narrow bodies, and if we cannot reach for the narrow body, we will go with a wide body. What happened recently is that the manufacturer looked at increasing the range of the narrow bodies, and on the original jets, they tried to increase the size. We're getting in a situation where regional jets and our body are competing against each other. And the decision has to be made in terms of Size, because we don't want to fly an aircraft too big for the market, which will result in empty seats, which are pure cost without revenue. This is schematic and represent the cost per seat compared to the aircraft size. Of course, every time we increase the size of the aircraft or the number of seats on the aircraft, the cost would go down. But let's look at the different comparison. The turboprop and the original jets. So for similar size, turboprop is cheaper than original jets. Except that when we try to fly longer distance, the original jet becomes cheaper than turboprop. The turboprop will always burn less fuel per kilometer than the original jet of the same size. But since it is slower, the cost of maintenance and the cost of the aircraft will go up as the distance grows. There is a threshold where the turboprop and the original jet cross and where the original jet becomes cheaper to operate than a turboprop. This depends on the maintenance costs and the fuel costs of the country. But it is roughly around 800 kilometers. When we compare the narrow body and the wide bodies, there is an area where for the same size we can have a narrow body or a wide body. In this situation, it is almost always preferable to fly the narrow body. It is a lot cheaper to operate. But in some rare cases, we would prefer to use a wide body for two reasons. One of them being the cargo. Cargo hold of a wide body is much bigger than a cargo hold of a narrow body, and we can carry a lot more cargo. In destinations where the yield of the cargo is high, this can make sense. But this is rarely a good reason to fly a wide body. A good reason to fly a wide body is the business class of the wide body. A business class seat provides more or less 4 to 5 times the revenue of an economy class seat, and will occupy more or less twice as much space as an economy seat. So there is a significant advantage in having business class seats over economy seats. The question is, why did all the full business class airline fail as of today? This is mostly due to the distribution. If you have a unique route and you don't have the economies of scale, you would not be able to be distributed everywhere. Although the market between London and New York is big, many airlines rely on the connecting traffic as well. The airlines which had only this route and full business couldn't attract the business class passengers. If they were full, they would be able to sustain. The problem was they could not fill the seats on their flights. So now we know what airplane we have. The following question is the configuration. How do we fit the seats in our aircraft so that we can have the maximum revenue at the end of the year? So we see here two extreme examples where in the same aircraft, which is the 321, we have 102 seats for American. We have 4 different classes: the first class, the business class, the premium economy, and economy. While in Spirit 321, we have 218 seats, all economy with a lower what called pitch, which is the distance between seats. And if we divide the cost of flying those two 321 by the number of seats, the cost per seat on Spirit would be half of American. For the same route, that's where American has to fill its business and first class with high-yield passengers that pay twice, 3 times, 4 times, maybe more than the economy seats. So that is all for the network planning, and the next step we will look at the revenue management.